This looks like a job for...
Well, truth be told, the side effect of this episode was certainly making me long for something better. It was an interesting concept that played out in this episode in the ways that it tackles Ben's aliens becoming unwell and introduced a one-time villain that I must assume was a rejected idea from Men in Black. But there's something that's always bugged me about this episode, and I've never been quite able to pinpoint it. It's not necessarily that it's a bad episode, I guess, it just doesn't land in the same way as, say, a lot of previous installments do in this first season, especially compared to the other dud episodes like A Small Problem or Tourist Trap, both of which carried a level of intrigue to the respective villains and potential consequences for the world at large, and especially in the case of A Small Problem, for example, had a comedic undertone from grey matter that won me over. Before I try and determine the jaded feeling that I have for this, let me run you through what happens real quick. We open on a demolition crew starting to tear down buildings for a redevelopment project in the area when they are attacked by Edgar the Bug over here, who demands that they stop or face the consequences. After the intro, we see Ben trying to take down a bunch of crooks as upgrade, which naturally ends with him succeeding at kicking ass. And as a reward on this occasion for himself, he decides it would be a good idea to jump in the back of an ice cream truck, but unfortunately becomes stuck after timing out, which makes him ill. After some time has passed and we've seen the effects that Ben's illness has taken on him, Max takes him into town to look for a specific ingredient that will clear up his sinuses better than any pharmaceutical. It's here when we get to see what the effects of this cold will have on the aliens in the Watch when Wildmutt is activated following Edgar's reappearance and trying to disrupt festivities around the town. He also kidnaps the mayor, who commissioned the destruction of the apartment buildings to begin with in this moment too, and after Gwen's poor attempts to help Ben almost ending them burning the place down and each other, Max suggests that Ben refrain from using the Watch for now. They track down where a bug's life went, and Ben decides to screw around with the Watch again despite heavy warnings from Max, and becomes Forearms in an attempt to scare Gwen. They quickly find the mayor and Tick tells them what this is all about. After a swarm of ants attack Forearms, the villain in question, named Clancy, inadvertently causes the destruction of his home from Forearms freaking out, and in an attempt to get them off his body, he starts crashing through the structural elements of the building, bringing everything down around them. Clancy, now extremely pissed at this, takes off, promising to avenge his fallen brethren by exterminating the entire city by compromising a nearby nuclear plant. Ben and the gang take off and catch up with him at the plant, which is about to go critical. Ben goes hero and becomes Heat Blast, who, to everyone's surprise, has changed colour in his flames to reflect his illness, and now possesses the ability to produce frozen flames, which works perfectly to cool down a nuclear reactor and stop Clancy. After we leave the plant and the gang thinks it's all done for the day, we find out that Clancy defrosted and has come back to end it all. However, as he's tearing his way through the rust bucket and is about to put Max 6 feet under, Ben remembers that the bugs are drawn to potent smells, which brings a use for the medicine Max tried to give Ben earlier, becoming a solution for the matter and getting the bugs out of the rust bucket. Max knocks Clancy out and they just leave, with Gwen now suddenly contracting the cold that Ben had.
Well, this sucks.
So as you can see, there's some interesting ideas involved in this episode, particularly the effects of a common cold and what it can do to the aliens on the Watch. We only got to witness Forearms, Wildmutt and Heat Blast in this instance, but one has to wonder what it could have done to the likes of Ripjaws, who has a higher demand on being able to breathe, or the possible detriment that could have come for the likes of Stinkfly or Accelerate. It would have been cool to have seen visual ideas of what this could have been like, but I guess we can let our imaginations run wild on this one for a bit. The roundabout use for Heat Blast in the end made sense and was probably the most natural consequence of an alien contracting a cold. Compare this to Forearms, who just went a little pale and had pus-filled pits. The forgettable detail of the medicine being used to fend off the swarm of bugs was a clever use of Chekhov's gun, as it served to remedy the solution later on, and brought a spotlight on details like this to look out for in the future, as they appear to be seemingly unimportant aspects but actually have a good part for the story later. I enjoyed the quippy banter as usual, and some of the bug-based puns were cringe-inducing, but in the best way, and certainly befitting at the times. So looking at all of these positives, why don't I like this one? The best way I can put it is, I feel apathetic to it. I can identify where the episode remains consistent in its quality of subtle writing and storytelling, and the use of the Watch was excellently done, but I just don't feel enthused by this. The villain is a one-timer showing up only once more in a video game, and we never get any insight as to who he is, where he comes from, what he wants, why he's doing what he is. The list goes on. I'm not a big fan of the pacing to this one. The episode feels very muted in its saturation, which may have been an intentional decision given the premise itself, but couple that with the music being oddly disconnected at times, it just provides a rather deflating experience. The larger plot for this feels uninspired and doesn't bear any wider importance to the series, nor does it bear any consequence to the world at large. You think back to Tourist Trap and A Small Problem, they both had potential setbacks for the world as much as Ben and the gang. For example, the megawatts could have internally combusted the fucking planet had they been allowed to spread, and if the Forever Knights collected Grey Matter's DNA, not only would it have killed Ben, but it likely would have found a way to manipulate it for some nefarious means against everyone else. The stakes never felt heightened in this, it just felt like a minor distraction, and a rather frustrating impasse heading into the finale. Anyway, that's all I've got on this one for now. I appreciate you stopping by. If you did like this video, slam on that like button, kick the subscribe in the face, and until next time, take care everyone, and I'll see you soon.